Mr. Gyaneswar Chaubey is a very vibrant researcher. I see his name all the time in the paper. I'm looking forward to meeting him when I get to Varanasi. So I have about 10 slides. This is basically, they are based on this article, Aryan invasion theory, final nail in its coffin. Next slide, please. And this is based on this chapter written by Stephen Knapp. And he's written a book, Advancement of Ancient India's Vedic Culture. Next, please. The Aryan invasion theory is the idea that about 1500 years before Christ, people came from Caucasian mountain region and descended on India, and they wrote the Vedas, they wrote the Sanskrit, and they forced the natives to accept their culture. This is a very rough summary of what the Aryan invasion theory is. The fact is that it is a theory which is based mainly from linguistic speculation, which happened during the 19th century, when very little archaeological excavation was done in and around India. This is before the early archaeological evidence, came around. So our famous archaeologist, Professor G.P. Singh, mentioned that Aryan invasion of India is a myth and not the truth. Aryans were neither invaders nor conquerors. They were not the destroyers of the Harappan civilization, but one of its authors. Next, please. So, I just have to talk extempore a little bit here. There's always a debate about this. When did Mahabharat war take place? When did Kali Yuga start? So Kali Yuga started about 5,000 years ago plus. How do we know this? This has been done repeatedly by astronomical calculations. I read about this for the first time in the Secret Doctrine, which is a book which is authored by the originator of the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky. They fed into the computer the planetary movements that are described in our scriptures as to when the Kali Yuga started. And they ran the computer backwards. And that's how this date was established, exact date, exact time established. And this was done later on also, as I will show in the slides. But if we believe that Mahabharata took place, we have to believe. It happened 5,000 years before. And anybody who has read Gita will see so many times Bhagwan Krishna mentions to Arjun, Arya. The Arya word is mentioned so many times. So he was not talking about an Aryan race. Arya means somebody who is civilized, somebody who is noble, somebody who is educated. So that's the title, Arya. So we can see that this Aryan theory, invasion theory, was based mainly on linguistic, and But moreover, we see that there is migration from India to the West. Actually, this will be showing up later in some of my slides. The Vedic culture was founded by sage Manu between the banks of Saraswati and Drishtavati river. Saraswati river was the main river in Rigved. If you read the Rigved, there are richas describing different rishis. They had ashrams along the Saraswati river, including Vashisht and Bharadwaj and many others. And according to modern land studies, there was a massive river. The Saraswati river is described some places up to 14 kilometers wide. And it ran like that. It preceded. The Vedas describe about Saraswati river before the Aryan invasion theory envisioned that there was any civilization in India. Next, please. Professor Chaubey, I hope that we'll be able to see his video on the Facebook. Will give much more. He's an authority, world authority on cytogenetics. But I have extracted this material from this article, and I'll just mention that there was no real divide between North and South India in terms of so-called invading Aryans in the north and Dravidians in the south, as explained by David Frawley. David Frawley has adopted a Hindu name. I have spoken to him. He has written many books, and he lives in Arizona. And he wrote here that Dravidian history does not contradict the Vedic history either. And we know that, I have read it, and you might have read it also, that Agastya Muni traveled to south, was instructed by gods to travel south and spread the word there. And the Vindhya mountains arose after that, so that he stays in south. So the Dravidian culture is based on Rishi Agastya, his teachings. And so the invention of Tamil language, the oldest Dravidian tongue, to Rishi Agastya. And Rishi Agastya is one of the prominent sages, mentioned so many places in the Rigved. I have studied Rigved. Dravidian kings historically have called themselves Aryan and traced their descent through Manu. A recent landmark global study in population genetics by a team of internationally reputed scientists, as reported in the History and Geography of Human Genes by Luca Cavalli Sforza from the Princeton University Press, reveals that the people who inhabited the Indian subcontinent, including Europe, concludes that all belong to one single race of Caucasian type. This confirms once again that there really is no racial difference between North Indians and South Indians. Next, please. It's interesting to know, how did Aryan invasion theory start? So this basically, the idea came, the British came to realize during our first independence struggle in 1857 that they cannot rule India. It's too big and they're too few. So they felt that we need a large number of supporters and collaborators from within the Indian population, because we cannot, I remember when I was a young boy studying in Jaunpur, my teacher in 4th grade used to have a map of India on the blackboard. And she used to draw a small map of England. And she used to inspire us when we were 4th grader, about 9 years old, that look at this, such a small country, such a small number of people are ruling such a huge, my nationalism, I think, was inspired by that teacher. Ever since I saw that, I said, that's not right. Anyway, I remember Thomas Babington Macaulay. I remember reading his articles and his poems in grade school when I was studying in Jaunpur, TD College. And I remember, I can give you an example of his very flowery English. You know, if he had to say that I will knock you down, he will say, I will convert your verticality into laterality. And now this is not something easily understood, but from a vertical person, I'll turn you into a person who is laying down. So he was the chairman of the Education Board of India. And he founded the education system in India, modeled after British system. And we still follow that largely. We are still trying to get out of this. A lot of British influence is still there. हम लोग कहते हैं, अंग्रेज चले गए, अंग्रेजियत नहीं गई. That red tape is a gift from the British. They gave us so many gifts. So, in which he wanted to rule India by undermining the Hindu tradition. And how did he didn't have the wherewithal how to do this. So his idea was to create a class of English educated elite that would repudiate its tradition and become British collaborators. So that the point was that the religious conversion and colonialism were to go hand in hand. And he was looking. He couldn't find any way to do this. So he ran into a very poor young man, German Vedic scholar named Friedrich Max Müller. And many of you who have visited Delhi, you have seen Max Müller Road, Max Müller Bhavan, and we have applauded Max Müller as if he is God sent. I think it was inspired by the British. Who was Max Müller? I have read he translated many of the Sanskrit books, Sanskrit Vedas and Upanishads. Next, please. But I have read some of them, and I know this is not the next slide. I think we have to go back. Okay, so just stay there. So Max Müller wrote the Vedas, he translated, and his translation I have read. Normally, if you read a religious book or if you hear a prayer, you develop feeling of love towards God, love towards Bhagwan. But reading Max Müller's work, it was so dry and it did not inspire any religious feeling in me. It was describing a very neutral way, and I could not understand why he's so famous, because he has translated the Vedas. So I remember the Gita Rahasya, which was written by Tilak, Gangadhar Tilak. in his introduction, he mentions a letter which Max Muller wrote to the British Queen. He says, I have destroyed Hindu religion by translating the Vedas, and now the people who read this, they will think it's all poppy talk. There is nothing in that Vedas which is worth reading. And that's what my goal was. So look at, this is Max Muller. He wanted to promote Christianity. And lo and behold, you may not know, he was paid by the East India Company. East India Company, and the East India Company made him very rich. He became a very rich German after he finished all this translation. So, but he was a very nationalistic German. He was motivated by the superiority of the German race through the white Aryan race theory. German people think that they are the most intelligent people on the planet and they are superior. And that's what drove, you'll recall, Hitler to do a lot of things which nobody can be proud of. So this was the genesis, that Max Muller wanted to help Christianity spread in India and produce collaborators of the British Raj, the English elite, English studied elite. They became believers that all what is written in the Vedas and the Upanishads is just a story, it's imagination, there is no truth in it, and no substance in it. This was the genesis of this enterprise, translating Rig Veda from Shayan Bhashya. I have read Shayan Bhashya of the Vedas. It's a different class completely. There is nothing to compare with Shayan Bhashya and Max Muller's translation. But 50 volumes of sacred books of the East. This was the series of production which Max Muller made. He also wrote about his book to Duke of Argyll. Then he was the acting secretary of the state for India. The ancient religion of India is doomed. And if Christianity does not take its place, whose fault will it be? Look at him. Look at his gall. We call our religion Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means it has no beginning, it has no end, it's all the time, Sanatan. And this is what the gall Max Muller had to say, that the ancient religion of India is doomed. Next, please. So, what was the damage? Why are we talking about this? The Aryan invasion theory. As Professor Chaubey was saying, this question is like 150 years old. But I think the trend is now that nobody with the right knowledge will believe in this. It's dead. But it has done permanent damage to India. How has it done the damage? Let's look at it. The British believed in divide and rule. They have divided India into Muslims and Hindus, and look at what has happened. We are still struggling with the legacy of the British. But they divided the Hindu society and the state of India. The North Indian were called Aryans, and then they pitted them against South Indian Dravidians. This is an artificial, as far as I know, division, along with the high caste against the low caste. I was attending a meeting a few days ago in Lima, Ohio, and somebody asked me, there is prejudice in India, prejudice in America. In America, there is black and white and brown and yellow, whereas in India, it's high class, low class. So I said, this is something which has great deal to do with the British. They they have promoted this, and I can talk another time more about this, but high class and low class. So the British made us think that Purans are all stories after this Max Muller's translation, fiction. So we call them not as history, but we call them like this is mythology. This is mythology means something false. So they had us believe that this is myth. Mythology comes from myth. Myth means something which is not true. So this is the damage done by the Aryan invasion theory. Even in India today, it's often the case that the schools teach the Western view of the Indian history. And even European translators of the great Vedic text. Children are taught that their culture is inherently inferior to the Western developments. And Hinduism is archaic, outdated, and nothing to do to offer people today. And I'll give you an example. I'm a member of the a group, interfaith group. And a few years ago, we were going around different temples of worship, and they came to the India Club. So there were priests there, there were rabbis, there were maulanas, and they were all talking about that we are polytheistic. Our religion is polytheistic religion. We have multiple gods, 33,000 devatas. So I told them, this is a few years ago, that all those people who read the English version written by non-Hindus, they talk about this, they don't understand our religion because our religion is unitheistic. Parabrahma Parameshwar, he is the one who converted into all these other devatas. So this is what they did, the British translation and the British influence in India. Next, please. Can you move to the next slide? Yes. So he created Western youth, but we don't know. I mean, no, don't change it, please. Just stay on the previous slide. Go to the, yes, just stay there. So but right now the situation is that in Banaras and many of the religious places in Haridwar, I find that there are East Europeans, ladies, and their children are reciting Vedic mantras and they're speaking Sanskrit. So the point is that the Western youth look towards India for its spiritual inspiration and are using ancient Indian and Vedic traditions such as yoga, Jyotish, Vastu Shastra, Ayurveda, and we have a famous Ayurveda author in our audience. I saw Dr. Sharma. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for joining this crowd. I'm sorry our lecture didn't go, but you will be able to see that on the Facebook later. So Dr. Hari Mohan Sharma has written many books on Ayurveda. He's a pathologist and we are friends. He lives about 100 miles away from me. We came from the same medical school. He was 1 year my senior. So, but he learned so many things about Ayurveda. His book should be read by everybody. So many people from the West, I see in my practice here, they are looking for Ayurveda. All the herbal medicines are very popular. You find it in any pharmacy. So Vedic philosophy is to reach their highest potential and well-being. That's what they're doing. A few days ago, when we were in a group meeting in Lima, they asked me to start a meeting with a prayer. So I said, the prayer, and this prayer was between the teacher and the student, and it said, let us all learn something together. The same prayer which I recited in the beginning of our meeting here. I recited that prayer and I translated the meaning, and their jaws fell down. Such a concept we have in our Sanatan Dharma, that everybody, it's all encompassing. It's uniformity in the diversity. It promotes uniformity in diversity, whereas the Western culture creates diversity in uniformity. So the native Indians were underdeveloped. This is what Max Muller and his friends, they promoted. Native Indians were underdeveloped, and they pushed out of the area taken over by the Aryans. This is where they are creating this rift between South India and North India. The people in the South don't want to do anything with the North. They talk about different language. We will not learn Sanskrit. We will not learn Hindi. And we will have our separate identity. And all this, I think, is part of this. The Aryan invasion theory had something to do with this. So those who went south to avoid the invading Aryans, according to Max Muller and this Aryan invasion theory, are called Dravidians. Actually, it's wrong. Like Professor Chaubey started saying, 60,000 years ago, people migrated from Africa and they came to India. I don't know how they came. Did they come by Middle East, or was there a continental shift which took place and created this Arabian Sea in between? How did they come? But they are the originals, that as far as we know. So next, please. Next slide. Yes. So the British missionaries, as early as 1840, went on to use this theory, Aryan theory, invasion theory, as a means of persuading people in South India to reject the Vedic tradition, since it has been forced on them by invaders, quote unquote, Aryans. And now you find there are more Christians living I went to Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. My friend, Dr. Nallu, he tells me his village has so much money is pouring in from outside in his village, that there are very few Christians a few years ago. Now there's a big church there. And many people have taken Christianity because they say that is a better religion than Hinduism. But if you look at N.S. Rajaram, who succinctly stated, English translations of Rig Veda represent a massive misrepresentation built on the preconception that Vedas are primitive poetry of the nomadic barbarians. Even of late, there has been leaders in Tamil Nadu who have promoted Dravidian identity and gave reasons why they should reject Hinduism, which is but an imposition on the natives. Next, please. Next slide. Yes. So what are the objections we have? Professor Chaubey, I'm sorry we couldn't hear him, but we'll be able to see his video later on the Facebook. He will give the genetic and many other versions. He has written an article about, I'm told, in the Hindu newspaper, which is published from Tamil Nadu, about the invasion theory. But Mortimer Wheeler, who after reporting a few skeletons being found at Mohenjo-daro, said people of Mohenjo-daro had been massacred in the invasion of the region. However, the skeletons have been found at different stratigraphic levels of the site. Some there intermediate levels, some late levels. You know, what that means is they were much later. They are not as old as they are claiming. So that's why that has to be overlooked. There is ample proof of continuity of habitation in Mohenjo-daro civilization, and the Aryabhat. Aryabhat is defined as a river Doaba between Ganga and Yamuna now, but Aryabhat means the whole of India. There is continuity of inhabitation. There is nothing like something happened 1500 before Christ, and there was, so there is continuity. We have at least, I'm always looking for this. My friend Abdul Jamil Khan always likes to contest this. 9,000 years at least or more of Indian civilization that I know of in India, but it's much older than that. Another point is that they are looking for linguistic proof. Oh, there is a tablet found in Mesopotamia, which is oldest language found ever. No, you can't go by that, because Vedas were Shruti and Smriti. It was not considered proper to write them on a piece of paper or bhojpatra. It was transmitted from mouth to the ear. So that's why they did not find written Vedas scripts, any place. It has been an oral tradition. In fact, we have established in the proof of Vedic culture of global existence, Vedic texts, that there is no mention of any migration at all. If there was a big migration, Aryan invasion, there should have been mentioned someplace that we traveled this much and we reached there and we started from, nothing like that. Next, please. So when the idea of Aryan invasion was developed by Max Muller, he was formulating dates based on his familiarity and loyalty to British tradition. At that time, when this Aryan invasion theory was developed, they thought in the British tradition that there was no civilization 4,004 years before Christ. That was the limit of their imagination. So this is what the whole thing is false. Narhari Achar, a physicist from University of Memphis, clearly showed with astronomical analysis that Mahabharata war took place 3,067 years before Christ, seriously challenging the outside Aryan origin of the Vedic people. Next, please. When the idea of the Rig Veda has described ancient and glorious Saraswati River, known to have dried up around 1900 before Christ. This is before the Aryan invasion theory, according to that theory, took place. That took place around 1500 years or so before Christ. So there is a description of Saraswati River, which had dried up before the Aryan invasion. And all this Rig Veda describes about so much detail. The proof of Saraswati River has been found without any doubt through the satellite images, through drilling. And so Aryan invasion theory doesn't make any sense. drying up back in 3000 before Christ. So this could not have been written by invaders about Saraswati River. If the Aryan invasion theory was correct, then the Vedas were written after the invasion, but that's not true. So how could it be that they describe worshipping a river that has already ceased to exist 500 years earlier? So many great Vedic rishis were also mentioned in the Rig Veda as having a connection with Saraswati River, such as Vashisht, Jamdagni, and Bharadwaj and others. Many kings also are mentioned in the connection with the Saraswati. Next, please. Proof of Saraswati, I think I mentioned that they have been seen by the satellite image. The Satluj River changed its course and discontinued being the main contributory of Saraswati. That's what happened. This is reported by geologist Sir Ariel Stein. When the satellite images were made through the Earth sensing satellites, while the satellite images coming through the Earth from 1978. So this is proven. Next, please. So Saraswati has dried up. It predates the Aryan invasion theory. Next, please. Next slide. So the genetics shows that there was a movement from east to west. Mr. Raja Raman, a particular trait that we chose as characterizing a population group is called genetic marker. One such marker that has proven useful is M17 genetic marker. It is common in India and in adjacent regions, but because increasingly rare as we moved westwards into Europe. This combined with the fact that Indian carriers of M17 are genetically more diverse than European carriers, showing that Indian population is older than European. Oxford genetist Stephen Oppenheimer, quite clear in his, and he's focusing on M17 marker, says South Asia is logically the ultimate origin of M17 and its ancestors. Sure enough, we find highest rates and greatest diversity of M17 lines in Pakistan, India, and Eastern Iran. Low rates in Caucasus. Next, please. So that's the end of my remarks. We can get away.
Namaste to everyone. It has been an honor to be here, and I'm really grateful to Mishra sir for inviting me for a talk on this a vibrant question, which is still being haunted by several disciplines, and many disciplines are trying to answer this possibly 150 years older question. And genetics is one of these. I'm also thankful to Nirupma ma'am, with whom I interacted, as well as Ankurji, Jayanti ma'am, with whom I chatted and interacted about this meeting, learned the process. And now I'm here to present the work which has been done by some of our groups, as well as partly by other labs in the world. So this is a normal basic question that we always ask, that who we are and how did we reach here. But when the politics starts to involve in such questions about the identity of a person, identity of a group, or identity of a country, then the disciplines which are actually able to solve that particular problem usually cannot able to solve because of such a great interest of people and such a interesting people who tries to manipulate the things. So I have some of the slides. Actually, the slides are made in such a way that students should understand it. And also, there are several complicated analysis, statistical analysis, which I usually omitted because that's not needed. This is like a story, and this story should be understood in such a way that how science tried to solve these questions, and in which background we can say that whether there is a migration, there is no migration, or what about the peopling of India, how the peopling of India has been actually in the last several thousand years has been made, and several ancestry, they just interacted. So I will make a presentation on this topic, and this will be related with the population of India. So our question is there any migration to India which is reflected in our genes? Actually, we all are admixed. There could be several migration to India, and we are the one who give the shelter to the people. For example, like Parsis, they have been kicked out from their original place, that is Mesopotamia, the present Iran. And you will be amazed to know that the real Parsi gene, the real Parsi ancestry is actually existing in India, not in Iran, which is their ancestral place. So similarly, the Jewish people who have their roots into Israel, during the exile, some of the group came to India, and these groups, they have partly admixed with the Indian population, but mostly they adapted the culture as well as they have used their own culture. So India is like a melting pot, like a shelter for everyone or many of the ancestries, but with a restrictions that they shared a lot of cultures, but very limited amount of the genes. So in the whole talk, we have a summary. And first we talk about the hypothesis, that how hypothesis has been built based on different disciplines. There are several markers, genetic markers, which are being used to understand our ancestry. So these are mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome. So mitochondrial DNA we inherit from our mother, and only female can pass it to the next generation. So that is how it is known as a powerhouse, the powerhouse of the cell. And the Y chromosome is being passed by the father to the son, and this is how it moves from generation to generation. And there are autosomal markers, that is also known as biparental or diploid markers. We also talk about some very significant work by Harvard University, some work by our lab, and then we start asking some of the questions about like the Austroasiatic people, the Mool Nivasi, usually the term which has been brought by the English people, the British Raj. And there are new evidences, the new results from our Y chromosome study. So we bring all this information to you slowly. And if you have any question, you can ask me. I'll be available to answer your question. So there are three different scenarios. Actually, the different disciplines, they all look about our origin. For example, this is the picture where we use the data coming from archaeology. So archaeology says, based on there is a Jiruru Valley in Karnataka. There they found some artifacts, some of the tools used by the modern humans. And they have found that even 74,000 years before there were modern humans, they were existing into the Indian subcontinent. And there was a migration from Africa to India and then further to Southeast Asia to Australia. And there was a Mount Toba eruption. They say that a huge amount of the population from every organism has actually finished because of the Mount Toba eruption. That was even months of the sun was completely covered in due to the Toba ashes, and the sun rays were not able to come to the earth. So this is how, but then there were few objectives and few suggestions which said that possibly the Mount Toba eruption has killed all of the humans if they were present into the Asia. But this research said that even before 74,000 years and after 74,000 years, there was a continuity. So it means that the humans were existing in both of the time periods. Then there is a genetic data which says that 40 to 60,000 years ago, there was out of Africa migration. This migration has brought many of the maternal and paternal lineages, many of the modern humans to South Asia and further to other parts of the subcontinent. Then the linguist, based on their linguistic knowledge, they say that none of the language group is actually originated in India. They all came from outside. For example, Austroasiatic, they came from Southeast Asia. Dravidian, they came from Iran and the ancient Persia. And then the Indo-European came from Central Asia, and Tibeto-Burman came from East Asia. But the new researchers have added that the Dravidian is most likely the indigenous language group, which has originated into the Indian subcontinent. And there are still ongoing research on about other linguistic groups. So based on language, based on genetics, based on the gene structure, and then based on our other informations, there are several disciplines which actually look to the origin of modern humans. So we use the genetic data. The genetic data we use as a tool to understand about the origin of modern human. If you have read about the structure of human cell, then very well you know that our human cell has a nucleus, several organelles, and there are few things, for example, like the nucleus. Nucleus has 1 to 23 chromosomes, the autosomes, then the sex chromosomes. And these sex chromosomes actually decide the sex of an individual, like male or female, XX and XY. And then there is a mitochondrial DNA. This mitochondrial DNA comes from mitochondria. So we all have a very complex structure, but these are the genetic material which actually makes us. So we have around 37.2 trillion cells in humans, 3.2 billion nucleotides, which makes our DNA. And these are our chromosomes. On these chromosomes, the DNA and the gene exist. So, and we use three kind of markers, and these three kind of markers are known as uniparental markers and then biparental markers. For example, like the female line, which explains about mitochondrial DNA, the male line, which is being used by the Y chromosome. But here you see that if we study the mitochondrial DNA of this female, we would be able to know only about the ancestry of the people in this green color. Same with the Y chromosome. If we study the Y chromosome of this person, we would be able to know in this tree about the male ancestors. But what about the gray color people? Because we don't have just a single ancestor. We usually get half of our genes from father, then half of the genes from our mother, then 25% from our grandfather, grandmother, then again 12.5% from our great-great-grandfather. So this is how the 50% genes reduces from one generation to another. So for that, we use autosomes, 1 to 22 chromosomes. And there, if we study all these three, then we usually could able to know about our female line, our male line, and about the ancestry of all our ancestors, which are present into the whole system, which has given us their genes. But there is one very important thing, like if we study mitochondrial DNA, the whole intact mitochondrial DNA 100% passes from one generation to another. Similarly, for Y chromosome, but for autosomes, it reduces from one generation to another. So that is why, if you would have studied about the marriage system in northern India, usually they say one has to avoid the marriages between a male and female up to 7 generations. So this 7 generation is actually the timeline when the sharing of the genes or chromosomes reduces to less than 1%. So using these DNA markers, we generate the data, and these data comes into AGCT format. The sequence of this AGCT is usually determine one kind of haplotype. So if there is a unique haplotype, means if there is a unique sequence, then it is called as haplotype. And same kind of unique sequences, if exist into several individuals, then it is called as haplogroup. So here, for example, I have given like haplogroup YY, haplogroup XX. They have a very unique kind of genetic pattern, the sequence of AGCT. And similarly, we use the changes, which is called single nucleotide polymorphism or mutation. And then these changes are being used to reconstruct the tree. So these trees are usually made based on the mutation. If they are longer tree, it means the longer time, the more time has been taken to make this individual. So to know the ancestry of an individual, if it is much older, then we get longer branch lengths sharing of two individual. For example, if some individual exists here, some individual exists here, it means a long time has been taken to accumulate this mutation, and these are sharing a very larger branch which has been shared by a common ancestor. Similarly, if you have a smaller tree, it means it has less diversity, less time for a mutation to accumulate. And then there is a phenomena called endemic diffusion or cultural diffusion. So endemic diffusion, when there is a population at zero time, there are two populations, have different kind of genes, have different kind of languages. After certain time, when this population move from one location to another location, it brings their genes as well as their languages, and then these population admix. So the genes and the language both of a reservoir population changes based on the migration. But in cultural diffusion, similarly, you see the genes has different color, languages has different color of two different population. When they admix, then what happens that they only change their languages, but their genes remains the same. The Mushahar, which is a population of North India, is a very prime example of cultural diffusion. Usually they were the Austroasiatics, but they started to live with the Indo-European people from the North India. And then they did not change their genes because they did not exchange the genes, but they changed their language. They were speaking Austroasiatic, but very quickly they started to learn the Hindi and other local languages. And this is how they just changed their language, but not their genes. This is overall demography of South Asia, where you see that mostly the Indo-European speakers are present into the northern and the western part. There is a Dravidian population called Brahui in Pakistan, whereas other are Indo-European or Indo-Iranian speakers. Dravidian speakers are mainly centered to the southern part of India, whereas the Austroasiatic people, they are present into the pockets. They are the tribal population to which the English people are the British Raj people, denoted as the person who came first, who are the first people of India. Whereas we see later that they are not the first people of India. Actually, everyone are the first people of India, because we all share the common ancestry, the earliest ancestry, which is present into the earliest settler of India. So in the Himalayan fringes, the Tibeto-Burman populations are present, whereas in the eastern part, there is a mix of various languages present into the subcontinent. So we have 5,000 well-defined population, even 10,000 castes, more than 500 tribes. Still 36 are practicing the hunting-gathering lifestyle. Our diversity are in languages, social structure, dress and food habit. As you all know, the marriage practices, our phenotype, and then our genetic architecture. Usually we use as a basic fundamental aspect to understand, to compare all these informations for an individual or for a population. So in our study book, we usually read about the common facts which are being used into the Indian system, Indian system of studies. But we see that into the next slides, when we discuss about our origin, we understand that these all are, which are considered as a common facts, they are actually wrong. So they say that the earliest occupation of the subcontinent by Austroasiatic people, the Santhal and Munda, who came possibly 60,000 years ago. So they are the Austroasiatic tribes, they are the Mool Nivasi. This is the British Raj, and further several Indologists say this. Then they were dispersed and driven into a smaller enclave with the arrival of the Dravidian speaker, who came around 3000 BC, means 6,000 years ago. And then they came from Mesopotamia. So they are not the Mool Nivasi, only Austroasiatic tribes of the Mool Nivasi. Then Aryans came, they pushed Dravidian to southern part of India, something like 3,500 years back, that is 1500 BC. And this is called as Aryan invasion. This is what we study in our class books. I also studied same then, because being a North Indian, as it has been explained in these books, that I am also a precursor of Aryan invasion, and my ancestors are not the Indians. So this was my main question, which has driven me to work in this direction. And then I went to the lab and started discovering first about me, about my mitochondrial DNA, and about my Y chromosome. And you'd be amazed to know that my common ancestor of mitochondrial DNA, I share a common ancestry with a Koya population, which is a tribal population in South India, that is called haplogroup M2. And something like 23,000 years ago, we had a common ancestor. For Y chromosome, I share a 2,500 years common ancestry with Kshatriya, and then 8,000 years old common ancestry with Santhal population. So this is how I understood that actually we all Indians are one. We share a very common root which goes back to the earliest settling time. But then there are several admixing events, but this admixing event has not replaced our earliest ancestry. This is very different from the European population, because in Europe, you see that the earliest settler was replaced by the farmers, the first farmers, and then the farmers were replaced by the Aryans. So the completely, it is showing a very contrasting pattern, where usually the European history is much more clear with the much more going well with the genetics, but Indian history does not match with genetics. So overall, if we see Indian gene pool in context of other world population, see this green color, this Indian gene pool, they are not shared by any other world population. And there are several branches which are independently coming something like 60 to 65,000 years back. In Y chromosome, we see the same structure, but there are a few sharing, like the Indian Austroasiatic people, they share with the East Asian population. Whereas R1A, which is another question, which is another marker, which many people suggest that this is the marker of Aryan invasion. But we see further that how it explains the another history, which is shared between the Central Asians, Europeans population. And there are a few haplogroups or few groups of mitochondrial DNA which are shared between Europe and India. But if we see the timeline, then it shows that it is well beyond the time of the migration, something like 20,000 years back, the European and mitochondrial DNA, European and South Asian mitochondrial DNA is actually being shared. So this is an interesting observation and interesting question. So if we look the maternal diversity, we see that there is a West Eurasian related ancestry, which is present on the northwestern part. South Asian exclusive ancestry present only in South Asia and the adjoining regions. Then East Eurasian related ancestry, which is present into East Eurasia. So the research, this is not me only who has started working in this direction. There has been work, very serious work has been done by different groups, different people, different labs in Europe and United States. So there was first study by Thomas Kiwifield in 2003, and he has found out that the earliest settler, which is the genes of earliest timing, which is like 60 to 65,000 years back, when people came from Africa to India, these genes is actually present into caste and tribal populations of India. But then there was another paper from Cordo, where they have found that the caste and tribal population have very independent Y chromosome. Then there was paper in 2004 on mitochondrial DNA, which said that the earliest history is present into each and every population of South Asia. But then there was further demographic episodes, that is some gene flow from both East and West has reshaped it, but it has not replaced it. Then further in 2006, there were Y chromosomal data, which also suggested that there is an indigenous South Asian ancestry, which is present only into South Asia. Then there are very limited influx, which came from East and West side. And Sahu and Sen Gupta, they both have found similar kind of observation based on Y chromosome study. Then in 2009, the Harvard University has brought a reconstruct of the Indian population by saying that there is ancestral North Indian population, then there is ancestral South Indian population, and all of the India has actually this kind of two ancestries. So they have found out that there is a big split from Africa, then there is a European population, then there is ancestral North Indian, which is possibly derived from a common ancestor of European population. Then there is a Andamanese Onge population, and there is ancestral South Indian population, and all Indian population are actually lying in between. But later, the same group has found out that this is not so easy, this is not so simple. There are several other ancestries which are actually defining the Indian population. Then further, there was a paper from the same group. They found that this ANI and ASI ancestry in India possibly had mixed 1900 to 4200 years back. So it means that there were some pure population of ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indian were existing, and then they further had mixed and made the current South Asian population. The same group with the CCMB Hyderabad group has further worked, and they have found out, based on the Indus Valley samples, they found out that the Indus Valley population are actually the one which has given rise to the maximum ancestry to the South Asian population. If we look to the overall ancestry of South Asian population, we can see that there is a main out of Africa migration, which are coming out of Africa. There was even earlier out of Africa migration, which has happened 120,000 years back, but still that ancestry has not yet been observed in India. So this hunting gathering population has given the Andamanese. Then there was a migration of farmers, which has mixed, and possibly the Dravidian language came, but this is again not correct. Dravidian language has actually originated into the Indian subcontinent and has mixed with the other ancestry. And this is how the overall Indian cline has been made something like 2000 years back. So the same group have studied the Indus Valley sample, and they have found out that the Indus Valley sample has already had a split from Iranian farmer-like ancestry, something like 10,000 BC. So 12,000 years back, the group has already been splitted, and the Indus Valley population is actually the major precursor for all the Indians who are living in India. And these are some results which has been done by our group. So first, what we have found out that whether we are divided into, let's say, language group Indo-European or language group Dravidian, we all share a more related common ancestry, and usually our genetic structure is more determined by the geography. For example, if someone is living in Punjab speaking Punjabi, someone is living in Tamil Nadu speaking Tamil. So obviously we see the genetic difference between them, but this is only because they are living so far from each. Each group live actually far away from both of the groups, and that is how there are less chances that they get admixed and then exchange the gene after the first split. So we also found that population structuring in South Asia is usually by two components. One is light green, another is dark green, and this light green is usually shared with the West Eurasian, whereas dark green is usually present only among the South Asian population. Then we found out that the highest diversity of the light green component is actually present among the North Indian, including the Pakistani population, and the highest South Indian related ancestry is present into the south of the Indian population, including the Munda speakers. And this sharing of the ancestry with Caucasus, Iranian, Central Asian is something which has happened more than 12,500 years back. And further, we have also found out that whether it is Indian Austroasiatic, Indian Dravidian, Indian Indo-European, they all share a common thread, because you see the whole, this is the genetic structure based on the genes. So the African population are here. There is a Siddhi population in India, which has been brought by the Portuguese, and they still share a lot of African ancestry. Pakistani, you see that there is Balochi, Brahui, and Makarani into one cluster, then Sindhi into another cluster, Hazara into third cluster, whereas all Indian population, they share a common thread, and this common thread has actually given rise to all the Indian population. So they connect. So this is the basic ancestry which connects all the Indian population. Then we have used the modern Indus Valley population, and we found out that some of the population, for example, Roar in the Indus Valley, they have a common ancestry, something like 50 generations back, and they probably have migrated from Central Asia, something like 50 generations back. So the ancestry of Indian population is divided into several groups. And these several groups are usually like the first basic ancestry is the one which is related, which is also present into Andaman Island. And it is between 5 to 50% present among all the Indian population. Then second, which is the highest ancestry, 30 to 70% is coming from the Indus Valley region. And there are minor ancestries, third ancestry, fourth ancestry. Something is coming from East Eurasia, something from West Eurasia, but it is not consistently present among all the population. So we have taken another study on about asking for the Mool Nivasi, which has been actually the population, the Santhal and Munda, which are living to the eastern part of India. They have been told by the Indologist, many of the Indologists actually say this, and also some of the, and this was the notion during the colonial time, that they are the Mool Nivasi of India, they are the one who are the real ancestors of India, and others came from outside. So we studied their DNA, and then there were two observations. One said that they are the one who came from Africa to India, something like 60,000 years back, whereas another story says that they came from Southeast Asia. So we have studied their mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosome, and autosomes. And here you see the red color represent Southeast Asian, the green color represent South Asian. So in mitochondrial DNA, the Austroasiatic people has 100% local indigenous Indian ancestry, whereas their Y chromosome shows that around 70% of their paternal ancestry comes from Southeast Asia. So this is two different kind of ancestries which has been seen into their mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomes. So we studied their autosomes, and we found out that except for some population, they are actually having the local mitochondrial DNA ancestry. So we studied their autosomes. These are the European population, Middle Eastern population, Indian population, South Indian population. The Austroasiatic are actually showing a presence between Southeast Asia and Indian population. They are more closer to India. However, there is another population called Khasi in Meghalaya, which is in between these two groups. And then the real Southeast Asian population are being found here. So here, if you see these ancestries, one color shows one ancestry. The South Indians, you see that mostly they have these colors. And here you see that this, the maroon color actually present into overwhelmingly present into Southeast Asia, and is also found into the Austroasiatic population. So it means that there was a migration of male individuals from Southeast Asia to India, and then further they admixed with the local Indian population. We studied their Y chromosome. We found out that their paternal ancestry has highest variance. It means wherever you see the high variance, we can see clearly that the origin is somewhere there. So they have originated into Southeast Asia, then they migrated to India. And we also estimated the time of admixture, which is something like 2,000 years to 4,000 years. And we used the Y chromosomal complete sequences. There we found that they are present into the big tree, which is actually originated into Southeast Asia, and further they migrated something like 5,000 years back from Southeast Asia to India. And there is not just one family, there are several founder groups, there are several, see these branches, they are coming out from the node, and these branches are actually migrated from Southeast Asia to India. So the Y chromosome, many people, they say that there is R1A, which is present among many Indian population. Overall, it is 10 to 15% in India. So this is actually is the marker for Aryan invasion. So before understand this to the analysis of the R1A, we should understand first the global Y chromosomal structure. So here in global Y chromosomal structure, we see that the Africa is the cradle of all modern human, because you see it goes something like 150,000 years back. Then there is a split, and then the rest of the world is being populated by the out of Africa migrants. And here you see that several groups several regions has their own Y chromosomal kind of ancestry. And then Indian has the H, which is most ancient, something like 50 to 60,000 years older. But the R1A is actually present into the Southeast Asia. Sorry, the R1A is present into the European, the Middle Eastern, and the Central and West Asian population. So this R1A sharing is being showed as a migrant of population from out of Africa. So R1A is not shown as out of Africa migrant, but they are shown as the people who came from Europe or Central Asia to India. So they are being depicted by many of the scientists as a Aryan invasion marker. Then we studied also this particular haplogroup. But before that, if we understand that the human first originated into Africa, then we should see that because it has migrated from out of Africa, so we should see the precursor of these African lineages to be present closer to African geography. But we have found out also there is an independent group from the Russia and UK. They have found out that the precursor of African gene pool is actually present into Asia. So what does it mean? It means that the group which has migrated from Africa to other parts of the world was not able to survive into these regions, but it was able to survive in this region and further expanded and reach to the other part of the world. And here you see that this whole earliest group after Africa is present into Asia, not into the Middle Eastern and other parts. And then based on this, we reconstructed this tree, and it has been shown that the group which has been populated rest of the world is originated either into the eastern part of India or into Southeast Asian region. If we look to the Indian Y chromosomal structure, we see that the almost 50% of the Indian males have a very unique haplogroup called H. There is 10% J, 10% L, around 19% R1A, 10% R2, and 6% of other haplogroup. So R1A and R2 has question, and these R2 is coming directly from the R node, and it has shown that 30,000 years before this group has originated somewhere in Orissa. So based on limited number of samples, there was a group from UK which showed that the R1A of Indian gene pool is actually present into very smaller branches, which has originated into something like 3,000 to 4,000 years back. But when we studied, we found out that Indian R1A, all the red dots are being shown by the Indian R1A. So Indian R1A is not only present into these bottleneck branches, but it is present everywhere into this branch. And the timeline for Indian R1A starts from 21,000 up to 4,300. So this is being represented by 50% of the population by M780 marker, which is also the precursor of gypsy population of Europe, which is the Roma population. So Roma population has also gone from India, is being attested by the Y chromosomal study. And if we see the distribution of this particular branch, which is present among around 50% of the Indian Y chromosomal R1A groups, so it is actually shown that it is possibly originated into the Gangetic Plain region, not to the any other European region. And R1A clades also shows that it is somewhere differentiated into the central part. So far, the most problematic thing is we are missing the ancient DNA, and these ancient DNA is being now discovered slowly, but still there are ways to understand of the ancient samples, because only one ancient sample which were in Indus region was something like 4,300 years old, but the history of India from 4,300 years up to the modern sample is completely missing in terms of ancient samples. So we are expecting that as soon as we have the ancient sample, we would be able to fill the gap and would be able to understand more about this question. But this is all about the 10% of ancestry which is present among the Indian population. Otherwise, the majority of ancestry is being driven by local Indian population. So the question of Aryan invasion, we wrote into the Hindu newspaper that still we need a huge amount of data to solve this question. But this is just to understand that this is all about the 10% of the Indian ancestry. Rest of the 90% Indian ancestry is being derived only into India. It has not come from anywhere else. So several group has to work just to find these results, because it is not easy for us to collect the samples. So my parental institute, Estonian Biocenter, with whom I worked, I did my PhD, then worked for several years. Then Professor George Wandrim, who is a linguist from University of Bern. Sanger Institute, Dr. Chris Taylor Smith, Qasim Ayub, and Vyalizu. Dr. Thangaraj from CCMB Hyderabad. And then Dr. Rakesh Tamang from University of Calcutta. Then there are few groups which has funded our result: National Geographic, Wellcome Trust, and the ERC. But overall, the result of Indian population ancestry, the ancestry of Indian population, shows that we are diverse indeed, but we have a common genetic unity which joins us, which is very unique, which has not been found anywhere else in the world. Thank you so much. And then I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks a lot.